this challenge review, we're going to go ahead and set up the co-op controls and make it so that 2 people can play this game. So the first thing I need to do is I need to isolate the player controls by player 1 and player 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this movement method. I'm going to duplicate it for player 2. So here we have our movement, which restrains the player and controls how it moves. We're going to copy this method. I'm going to duplicate it right below it, and I'm going to rename it to player 2. Alright, so here we go. We have private void player 2 movement. We're going to save that. The next thing I want to do is I want to look at our shoot method as well. I want to provide a shoot method for player 2. So here we'll duplicate that, and we'll say private void shoot player 2. We'll save this. And now we need to go to our update method, and we actually need to create the logic to separate these 2 players. So if player 1, we have our movement, and then here we have our shoot method. So what I want to do is we only want to actually hit the space key for player 1 or the left mouse click if they are player 1. So here we already need to add something. So if any of these conditions are true, we'll go ahead and say if any of these conditions are true, and in order to check for both of these conditions, and I'm putting them in a parenthesis so that these conditions get checked first. So it's either going to be they hit the space key or they mouse click, and they're player 1. So we're going to say player 1 is true, and 2 equal signs to compare, 1 to assign. So here this line says if you hit the space key or you hit the mouse button down and you're player 1, then you're going to fire. So now we just need to actually put this inside an if player 1 code or if statement. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and fill this in. Here's our if statement. If is player 1 equals true, we're going to do our traditional movement, and we're going to put the fire code in there. Okay, we'll go ahead and delete the comments here. And we can delete this. And now we're left with if player 2. So let's go ahead and fill this in. So here, if is player 2 is true, then we're going to do this, then this code will get executed. And here we have movement player 2 movement as well as shoot player 2. We'll go ahead and save this, and if we run it, nothing's going to change because we haven't actually modified the controls for player 2. So let's hop down to player 2 movement and do the movement controls first. Private void player 2 movement. Here, instead of float horizontal and using the input manager for the horizontal and vertical axes, we're going to be using the arrow keys 4, 6, 8, and 2 to move. In order to do that, we actually have to create 4 if statements that are going to check for each of those keys. So here, for instance, we're going to have, or the pseudocode for this will look like, it will say if hit, say 8, right? If hit 8, we're going to say move up. If hit 6, so if hit 6, move right. And then 4 and 2 will be the opposite of those. Okay, so let's start filling this in. So if we hit 8, we're simply going to create an if statement. Check if we hit the 8 key. So we're going to say if the input dot get key down, and actually get key if we're holding that key down. So if input dot get key, and the key I'm looking for is key code dot 8. So I don't know if it's alpha 8 or if there's like a keypad 8. Let's see here through the list. Say keypad. There is. All right, keypad 8. Here we go. Go ahead and save that. And basically we're going to move our character up. So we're going to say transform.translate to move us. And we're going to say vector3. We're going to move up. And we're going to multiply it by our speed. And we're going to add real time. We'll go ahead and save this, and let's go ahead and test it out. So basically, if you're player 2, and if you hit the 8 on the keypad, whoops, then you will move up. So let's go ahead and save it. Let's test it out. Head back into Unity, run our game. Go into the co-op. All right, so as of right now, it's constantly firing, which is a bug that we'll fix in a moment. However, you'll see here that I still control both of them for some reason. However, if I hit the 8 key, you'll see here that player 2 does move up. So although I am able to control both of them right now, we're starting to get into the right direction. So let's fix a few of these errors. Let's finish the movement system and then start debugging this. Hop back into our code here. So here, if you hit the 8 key, then we say transform.translate, else we do all this fun stuff. So let me see here. This is player 2 movement. So if speed boost is active, so we still want to consider speed boost for the player 2 movement and for player 1 movement. And let's see here. Okay, and this is why I'm assuming this is why we're able to control both of them. We still have logic in here that's really not relative to what player 2 is doing. So we actually need to rewrite a bit of this. We'll get to this in a second. Let's finish our if hit 6 and so forth. So what we can do is if we hit the 6 key, so here, another if statement, we do input.getKey, and we are looking for the key code .keypad6. And if we hit 6, we're going to say transform.translate. And what direction do we go? We go to the right. So we say vector3.right multiplied by our speed times real time delta time. Save this. And what we can do now is simply I'm going to copy both of these. And I'm going to paste it right below. And this will be the opposite. So if we hit the keypad 2, we go vector3.down. And if we hit keypad 4, then we go vector3.left. Okay, there's our movement system. So we have our movement system here. We have our if statements that check for each key press. And then here we have logic that says if speed boost active, then we're modifying our speed, right? This is for the power up. So what we're going to want to actually do here is we're going to copy this. And I'm going to basically say in here, we're going to be doing the same thing. So if speed boost active equals true, and let me see what the logic is here for is speed boost active is true. Translate vector3.right times the horizontal input. Okay, so here this is based on the old way of doing it based on our user input. We actually need to modify this. So if is speed boost active is true, you're going to put your if statements in here, and you're just going to simply add back that modification of 1.5f to each of these rows. So here you'll see speed is set, modified by 1.5f. So let's copy this, and we can just simply come in here and we'll add it to each one. All right, so now we're still modifying it by 1.5f. And then if your speed boost active is false, you're going to come in here and you're going to re-add this if statement and put it inside the else. And now we have our normal speed boost. So we're actually going to remove the 1.5f. Just like this. Okay. All right, now a lot of if statements going on. There are ways to optimize this, and I will let you figure that out on your own. One way to optimize this would be using a switch statement to make it more legible, readable, and efficient for the most part. However, this is a perfectly fine way to do it. So let's go ahead and check out what we have. Here's our player movement. We're no longer using input horizontal and vertical inputs for player 2, so let's delete those. And next, we have our speed boost, which modifies our speed based on user input. And then we have our regular user input, which is using just our normal speed. And then we have here our normal player constraints. So let's go ahead and save this, and we should have player 1 and player 2 isolated game logic. So let's go ahead and hit co-op. Now, I don't know why we're still firing, so we're going to have to look into that. However, I also am still controlling both of them, which we need to look into. However, if I actually use the keypads, I control player 2, but not player 1. So player 2 is following its own logic. However, player 1 is still able to control both of them. So let's look into why that is. And this video is getting a little long, so we'll look into that in the next video.